Here are the 4 stages of anxiety recovery. If you're dealing with intense physical symptoms that the doctors can't figure out, if you're getting scary, intrusive thoughts, depersonalization, derealization, weird emotions, you might be wondering, how does a recovery journey look like? Is this something you just wake up overnight and it's gone? Is it something that's gone for a long time and then might come back? Is it something that's linear? We've been so lucky to help people around the world overcome their symptoms. We don't say this as a source of pride, but more from a standpoint of a blessing, because we went through this, it was so difficult, and now we get to use something that was so challenging to help others. Now, something to keep in mind, that these 4 stages doesn't mean that recovery ends. What actually happens is that once you're out of the cycle, once you're not experiencing these symptoms, the recovery journey almost turns into what we call a self-development journey. You start going deeper, you start finding other things about yourself. But when you're experiencing these intense emotions, these intense physical symptoms, the first step is just getting out of the cycle first. Then you can explore all those things after. First stage is what we call the hamster wheel of anxiety. This is where you're doing everything to make the symptoms go away. You're taking supplements, you're doing breathing techniques, you're doing lifestyle adjustments, anything to make yourself find relief. You're getting panic attacks going places. You stop going places because you can't deal with the discomfort. These symptoms are too intense. You might also be worried, what happens if I pass out? What happens if all these symptoms occur while you go outside or doing things that would normally not make you feel anxious? So naturally you avoid. This is where you're going to therapists, you're going to doctors, you're Google searching your symptoms, trying to find exactly what's going on. Most people are stuck in this cycle, but when you get to the second stage, this is where recovery truly begins. I call this stage a shift to recovery. This is where you recognize that avoiding your symptoms doesn't work. In fact, it makes your symptoms generalized. So the key is to respond to the symptoms. It's recognizing that the physical symptoms that you're experiencing, they're symptoms. They're not the root cause. So avoiding it is actually making things worse. Once you learn how to respond to your symptoms effectively, then feeling the symptoms is part of the recovery journey. Something that you felt was holding you back is actually the key to your recovery. It's facing those panic attacks. It's facing those intense symptoms, learning how to respond, the scary intrusive thoughts. And as you do that, you find relief. Now, the third stage is what we call the paradox of recovery. What happens is people recognize that this is the solution, and now what they start doing is that they start relying on responding to their symptoms as a way to find relief. Basically, the same technique that they're using, they're now using that in a coping strategy in itself. We see this happen a lot with people on the recovery journey. They recognize that this approach works, so they start having the expectation that if their anxiety comes up, they respond and that the anxiety is supposed to subside. But then they start using it as a technique, another sophisticated form of avoidance. So it's recognizing this paradox that when you respond, it's not to make the symptoms go away. The symptoms go away later. And then the last stage is outgrowing the anxiety. You stop making anxiety a goal. You stop focusing on always trying to overcome your symptoms. You know how to respond. Now life becomes more important than your anxiety. Eventually the anxiety gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it only shows up like it used to before, when you feel just a little bit nervous. You don't experience any intense symptoms, but now life is more important than your anxiety symptoms.